Yes, good evening. Tonight, I'm very happy to welcome a good friend of our website and YouTube channel, actress and TV presenter and dubbing actress as well, Beth Cohen. How are you, Beth? Welcome.
Good evening, Sheriff. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much for accepting the interview. You remember we published an interview in English in my website,
Yes,
meetingvenus.com, about your work
yes,
2 years ago, and it was in the middle of the lockdown. I imagine everything was inactive.
yes.
And I want to ask you first, maybe you can tell us about your interest into the arts and how, being British, you decided to move to Spain and started to become a professional performer there.
So I always wanted to become an actress. As a small child, even as a 5-year-old, I was desperate to get on stage, and there was never any question that I wanted to do that with my life. My parents were very supportive. They took me to a local drama group. I then went on to train in drama. And I came to
Yes,
Spain entirely by accident as a young person. I was on tour with a theatre company. I love to
yes,
travel. It's one of my other great passions. And sort of the two main themes of my life are performing and travel. And of course, going on tour with theatre companies seemed an excellent way to sort of combine the two passions. And so I came to Spain on a theatre tour. I'd previously been on a tour to Germany, I'd been to France, I'd been to the United States of America. And I came to Spain thinking that this would just be another sort of few months touring with a performing theatre company, and then I would continue on my way. And I loved Spanish culture. I loved Spanish people. I loved the way of life here. And I ended up staying. And my agent said, "No, that you can't do this. It's professional suicide. You'll never work again." And yet here I am 20 years later, still in Spain.
yes. And before you started to work in theater and cinema in Spain,
Mhm.
who was your favorite director, actor, actress in Spain?
Of course, here in Spain, we have a lot of excellent, well-known international directors. Possibly my
Yes,
favorite would be Isabel Coset. And I was actually lucky enough to work with her a couple of years ago on a recent film that she did called It Snows in Benidorm, Nieve in
yes,
Benidorm, and that was a dream come true. I
yes,
find her direction very interesting. She also has a great way of connecting with her actors, and
yes.
her artistic vision is excellent. And controversially, I also enjoyed working with Jose Luis Moreno, who directed
Uh-huh.
me in Darkness, which is a period drama, which filmed even throughout the pandemic. And there were
Yes,
later on problems with Jose Luis Moreno. He had problems here in Spain, legal problems. And the series never came out, and he received a lot of criticism. But actually, I had a fabulous time working with him. Again, he took sort of creative input from his actors and really pushed everybody to love the project. And I think the thing about a great director is that not only do they have their own artistic vision and things to offer to the spectator, but also they're able to share that vision with everybody else in the team, so that the whole team's rowing in the same direction, and the outcome is a sort of dream for everybody.
yes. And right now, how do you started to look? Did you look for an agent in the beginning of your work in Spain to
Yes,
start your career?
in the beginning, I was working mainly in theatre, so of course I didn't really need an agent, because the thing about theatre contracts is that they're long, and also that means you're not available for anything else. So in my early years in Spain, I was really sort of involved with a theatre company full time, and also busy learning the language, adapting to the culture. And it was only after I'd been here for a while that I started sort of opening out and branching out into the audiovisual sector. And then I found that, of course, that I really did need an agent. I didn't have the contacts. I didn't have the knowledge of how the industry works here. I think the Spanish industry and the English industry are very different. And I found that Spain is much more welcoming, and there's also there are more possibilities to meet people and more possibilities to get involved with projects. Perhaps the fees here aren't as high as the English ones, But I think perhaps the life of an actor here is, certainly as an actor these days, as an English-speaking actor, is possibly a lot easier here than it is in England. I think it's also different because I'm a native English-speaking actor working in a country where there aren't that many other English-speaking actors, not, at least not professional ones with a good curriculum and who are available to work on sort of different projects and to travel. And so this really has sort of proved to be a niche. And when I first moved to Spain, being a native English speaker and speaking Spanish at the beginning with a British accent was a bit of a handicap. Whereas these days, it's actually a huge advantage because Spain, I think, is a very cheap place to film. We have excellent studios, excellent technical staff, and a lot of international companies are coming to particularly Madrid and Barcelona with big productions, a lot of adverts, a lot of fiction, and choosing to base their filming here, even though the content might not be particularly related to Spain. We have great exterior places, we have great countryside, and so it's becoming a sort of attractive option
Yes.
for people who want to film from other countries.
Yes, and Beth, you spoke about It Snows in Benidorm. What
Yes.
was your role? Yes, what was your role in the movie?
It was a very funny part. It wasn't a very big part. We were a group of girls on a hen night. So we go out in Benidorm to celebrate my friend's upcoming wedding, and we get horribly drunk. we create havoc. And so it was very funny because I was playing sort of the archetype of everything that I hate about Brits abroad in Spain, which is the sort of stereotype that I think a lot of Spanish people do have about English people, is that we come to Spain and we're rowdy and we disturb the peace and party hard and drink a lot. And of course I hate that, and I would never do that in real life, and having to do that was incredibly funny. Yeah. So we actually dress up as the Spice Girls. So my part was Sporty Spice, so we're sort of in fancy dress and creating havoc in the centre of Benidorm, and we sort of distract Timothy Spall, who's the protagonist, as he's kind of walking through the centre of Benidorm in his misery. He's having this sort of horrible night, and we try to cheer him up.
Yes, and what can you tell me about that? What can you tell me about your theater production in Spain?
Okay, so my theatre production in Spain has been mostly comedy. I actually trained in classical theatre, and my early roles were mainly Shakespeare. In fact, my first job was playing Puck. My first job was in A Midsummer Night's Dream. I was playing Mustard Seed, which is one of the fairies. It's the smallest part. I had literally 3 words. I had to say hail and I was 5 years old. I was so excited that I couldn't sleep for about 2 weeks before the performance. My mum had to wait until I went to bed to take my costume off because I refused to take it off. And that was sort of the beginning of my passion for Shakespeare, my love for Shakespeare. And I've since played other roles in Midsummer Night's Dream. I've played Puck, I've played Hermia twice. And also I've played a lot of other Shakespearean parts, Romeo and Juliet. I played Juliet age 21. It was my first job in Germany, and I did some training at the Globe Theatre in London about Shakespearean performance and Shakespearean text. And of course, that was, as a 21-year-old, what I thought I would do with my life. And of course, I came to Spain, and when I first moved to Spain, people here didn't really appreciate the English language, or the general level was not such that people would enjoy a performance of Shakespeare. And so, of course, a lot of the theatre that did happen in English was slapstick and comedy, and also musical theatre. So that's really what I've done. I worked for a good number of years with a theatre company called Face to Face. And they do children's shows, they do comedy. It's all very spoofy, tongue-in-cheek, lots of slapstick, sort of Charlie Chaplin style. Quite similar to another Spanish theatre company, which is called Tricicle. So that's the sort of style of theatre that I've done mainly in Spain. Later on, I've sort of moved into other styles, but maybe 90% of my work in Spain has been comedy. And I never thought that I would be a comic actress. I always thought that I would be a romantic heroine. And now when I'm working on TV shows, people often do say, "Oh, you're funny." And I think, well, I'm not meaning to be funny. But of course, working for so many years, being funny in theatre, I think you just pick up the habit of of making people laugh, and sometimes it now happens I don't want to be funny and it ends up slipping out.
Yes. And right now, do you still get offers from, I mean, agencies or producer outside of Spain? Because I've seen some in your video reel, your video book, you did some work in English. I imagine they were
Yes.
propaganda, like commercials as well.
Yes, I do a lot of commercials in English, both commercials which are filming in Spain, but they want English actors, as well as people who are filming abroad. I do love to travel for work, but the project would have to convince me if it meant I was going to spend a long time away from home. So whilst I do get offers from productions abroad, I've actually just sent my self-tape off for a project which may be visiting Egypt, but obviously it's bad luck to talk about things which haven't happened yet. But I do these days I do sort of enjoy spending time at home, time with my cats, time in the garden. And so if I am going to travel for a project these days, it needs to be something that I feel quite passionate about and that sort of compensates traveling away from home. As a young person, I used to do a lot of touring theatre, and of course you go off to explore the world with your backpack and you're doing 2-3 shows a day and you're traveling the world, and it's fabulous because you have no home ties. But as an older woman, I think it's increasingly hard for me to be away from home and to not miss it. So whilst I do sort of travel a lot within Spain, I work in Madrid, in Barcelona, in Malaga. I was in San Sebastian recently. Maybe 90% of my work is national, and I like it that way.
Tenemos un comentario de Maite Hernández. ¿No se puede traducir en español?
Hola, Maite. Can I see the comment? Maybe I can
Yes,
help.
you can see them. Yes. Yo estoy diciendo que vamos a traducir en algunos días, poner subtítulos.
Not helpful for a live interview.
Yes. And Beth, right now, what projects you are working on right now?
So at the moment, I'm working on a project. It's a film called Expression with a director called Luis Castro. Mm-hmm. And I play the youngest generation of a whole, there's 3 generations of the same family. So it takes place between the 1950s, the 1970s, and the 1990s. And my character appears in the 1970s as a child and in the 1990s as a young woman. We're 3 sisters. I'm a painter, and my 2 sisters are, one is a ballerina and the other is a musician. And we've inherited from our mother and our grandmother this sort of repression, the kind of the guiding theme throughout the film is the repression of women in the arts, and how my generation finally break free and were able to express ourselves. Our mother was a writer and she never published her novel because her husband didn't want her to at the time. And our grandmother was also an artist. And it's incredible to be working on a project where which really vindicates the right of young women to express themselves artistically. And I think you'd be delighted with the outcome. It's also the costumes, the set, the attention to detail. Working in something that's historical is incredible because you have to be very careful with everything. It's the costumes, the makeup, the all of the props, the setting, and when we're filming outside, you have to make sure that the cars which are appearing in shot are from the era. You have to make sure that nothing in the big exterior shots, there's nothing in there which can't be dated back to the 1950s, 70s, or 90s. And it was also fabulous to be playing the same role as a young actress who played myself as a child. So, of course, when we were preparing the role, I watched her and I thought about how she was and how I could transform that into a young adult. And between the three sisters as well, it was very interesting to find the chemistry, to find how we bonded as sisters, because physically we look quite different. But then, of course, the three children, again, two of the children have dark hair and blonde. But then we found ways of expressing our family bond. And we'll be finishing filming in December, and it will be out, I think, early next year.
Can you see the commentary with Luis Castro?
This is the director of Expression.
Yes. Hello,
Thank
Luis.
You. It's an honor to work with you. And
Yes.
Other recent projects, I've also been working recently on a travel series called Phenomenal. So this is filming in Spanish. It's
Yes.
by the director Alicia Van Asche, with Milojos Producen. And it's two British girls who are traveling all around rural Spain, visiting vineyards, visiting wine-growing areas, and doing sort of adventure tourism and food tourism. And I'm working with a colleague, Liberty Ann. It's an honor to be with her, and I hope she's tuned in as well. Otherwise, I'll be sharing this with her later. And that's it's been a really fun shoot. We've actually been filming all year, and we've just finished series 1, and it'll be coming out in January of 2023. And I hope it'll be the first of many series. It's a great team, and of course the dynamic that you have when you're traveling and working with a team, doing something that's so fun, because quite often when you're working on a project, you have your script and you go and you film and you come away. But with Phenomenal, it was a sort of long process, and we had 9-10 days straight with the team working on various episodes, and you get to sort of bond with your team members, and the activities which are featured on the show are so much fun. It has to go down in history as being possibly my most fun job ever. So not only do we do loads of things related to food tourism, so we get to try delicious things, but also we get karting, I went horse riding, Liberty goes flying in a plane. She looks down on me as I'm galloping through the vineyards. We go racing on a buggy. It's just been a fabulous, fabulous experience, and my most fun job ever. So here's to Phenomenal and to many more series.
Excellent. Can you see the commentary? Charlie Cruz with us.
Gracias, Carlos.
Gracias, Carlos. Tell me.
A few shows a few years ago, and he's a great actor and a great person.
Excellent. Beth, tell me, do you have a dream project or a dream role you would like to realize in the future, living between different culture right now, and maybe you have many influences around you that can inspire you to do something personal? I mean, a personal project.
I think for me, my personal goals at the moment are to continue working in the audiovisual sector, to continue growing personally and professionally. Perhaps if you'd caught me 10 years ago, I would have given a whole list of roles that I was just itching to play.
Yes.
I think these days, for me, the mark of success is to have a real balance between your personal and professional life, and to be working often, to wake up every day and to go to work, to have a project that I'm working on that inspires me, a part that I love, people that I connect with. Rather than particular roles, I think the emphasis for me now would be to work with people that inspire me, and to continue to grow, to work with increasingly larger production companies, perhaps roles which have more weight, and to have the choice, I think, as well. Because, of course, as a young person, you sort of grab at everything, you accept everything, you're sort of desperate to be involved in everything. And there comes a moment where you don't really want to do some jobs anymore, either because it's tiring, or because you're not inspired by the people, because you don't believe in the artistic drive behind it. And so for me, I think really the hallmark of success is to have the choice, to be, I mean, I hate to be materialistic, but to be well paid for the work that you do, and to have the choice to pick and choose roles which perhaps inspire you. I love doing roles where I have to step outside of the box, parts which I've not played before, roles which are maybe very different to me, because I get cast a lot in similar types of roles. So For example, I'm filming tomorrow for Zabriskie Films, and I'm playing an English journalist in a movie. And of course, that type of role I've played a lot, and it's easy for me, and I know how to do it. But it's as a sort of on an acting level, it's not a great challenge anymore. So for me, when I'm asked to step out the box and do outside of the box and do something that I haven't done before, that's a real challenge. So over the last few years, I played, for example, an elderly lady in a theatre production in Phantom of the Opera. I played Madame Giry, and of course, she's a sort of 70-year-old, this sort of crazy old lady. And in theatre, you can do that because your makeup is characterized, and you have a wig and the lighting, and you think about the way that you move. And I would come out of the stage door at the end of the performance, and the people who'd come to see the show would say, "Congratulations" to all of my colleagues, and they wouldn't say anything to me because they didn't recognize me. And at first I took it personal. I was like, why aren't people saying, congratulations to me too? Until I realized it was because my part was so different to who I am that they just had no idea who I was. And it happened again recently. I played an adolescent boy, again in a theatre production in Vigo, in the Teatro García Barbón in Vigo, in Galicia, in northern Spain. And again, with the wig and the way of walking, the way of moving, a boy's clothes. It was unusual casting, but we were doing a series of plays, and of course I fitted in with the other roles, and they said, "Okay, well, you have to play a teenage boy in this one." I said, "Of course, great, no problem." And when you get that kind of role, it's really stimulating, it's exciting, because you know that you're going to have to stretch yourself, and you're going to have to work that bit harder, and you'll learn from it. And so for me, the mark of success, I think, is to continue having roles like that and finding how you can fill those difficult parts and really grow as a professional, and that people propose you for things that perhaps you wouldn't have seen yourself doing, and then you find that you are able to do them. So I think in the future, I'd like to continue to sort of accept challenges like that and have the option to pick and choose and perhaps stretch myself a bit more artistically.
Great, Beth. I want to thank you very much for joining the live, and as well, I wish you all the best in your upcoming projects. Looking forward for your new films, new theatrical production, and let's hope next time we can attend one of your premieres in Spain or elsewhere.
Thank you so much, Sharif. It's an absolute pleasure to have been invited to talk with you. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in, and I hope to see you in the theatre or on screen.
Thank you, Beth. Have a lovely evening.
Likewise. Good night.
Good night. Hasta mañana.
Hasta mañana. Buenas noches.